Our big focus on the show today is the deficiency of a particular human protein, which is found more in Europe and the United States than in Asia. The reason why coronavirus is not spreading as fast in Asian countries. A team of scientists from the National Institute of Biomedical Genomics in Kalyani, West Bengal, have found a biological reason for the slower spread of a mutant coronavirus in Asia compared to the West. The team has explained how higher levels of a human protein called neutrophil elastase helps the virus to enter human cells, multiply and also spread faster from infected individuals. Well, to talk more about this, we're joined by co-authors of that study, Dr. Nidhan Biswas and Dr. Souvik Mukherjee. Both of them were involved in that study. We're also joined by Dr. Rajesh Parekh, Director Medical Research, Jaslok Hospital in Mumbai. Well, first and foremost, Dr. Nidhan and Dr. Souvik, if you can tell us about this particular study, I think you can explain it better than I did.
So thank you for the introduction. So we need to go a little bit into the flashback and see how it started spreading. So it was first reported from China, all of us know. And as you know, the virus, when it enters the cell, it needs to replicate itself, make multiple copies. And during this, it creates these multiple copies. It also introduces changes into your RNA genome, and these are called mutations. So within about 1 month of evolution, it actually introduces many changes into its RNA genome, and thereby by February 1st week, it had about 10 such sub-branches in the SARS-CoV-2 lineage. So, and then what we see in our first study that was published in April, and that a specific subtype 614G that spread very fast, about from 0% frequency in January end to about 100% frequency in Europe and North America, extremely fast. And so we are wondering why this particular subtype was spreading fast in Europe and North America. Are there interesting things in virus itself? So, and thereby we see that there is a specific mutation that happened on the spike protein, and that mutation is known as 614G because it is a change in the 614 position of the spike protein. So, so we are wondering what's new about this. And then to understand that, we saw that there is a new cleavage site, cleavage site at the spike protein at 614 position. So what's this new cleavage site is all about? So for that, we have to understand how actually virus enters the cell. So when actually virus enters the cell, its spike protein latches with the S2 protein in the human lung cell membrane, and another protein called template 2, which basically clips the spike protein and help the RNA to get into the cell. But now, what happened due to this new mutation on this spike protein? So there is a new additional cleavage site, and this cleavage site can be cut by another human protein called neutrophil elastase. Right. So now the virus can enjoy the dual processing of template 2 and the neutrophil elastase to get into the cell. So now the point is how neutrophil elastase is kind of high in the system. So then we need to also understand what neutrophil elastase does. So neutrophil elastase is actually a protein which gets up during the bacterial infection. But when it gets up, it also damages the host tissue, like the lung tissue. So that's why there is a counterbalance mechanism within the human system, and the balance mechanism is by a protein called alpha antitrypsin that basically make the neutrophil elastase in balance. Right. So yes. So then we actually looked at. So is there by any chance that neutrophil elastase is high in European or American subset of European or American individuals? So we actually looked at the data that people have done for the last 20 years. They looked at the lung disease carefully, lung disease data, and we saw that the alpha antitrypsin deficiency is widespread in European and American population than East Asian. And it's like tenfold difference between
Right. And Dr. Mukherjee, because this is very fascinating given that everybody's been quite flummoxed by the fact that, the numbers in India have been so low. We'll just try and reconnect with the doctors there. But Dr. Parekh, what is your opinion on this? Because, there have been so many theories as to why India's numbers are coming down. People have talked about, localized herd immunity, whether it's some sort of cross immunity as we face a lot of infections. So now this study claims that it could be to do with this particular protein, or rather the lack of it.
Well, Gargi, in all humility, we must accept that we are on our learning curve as far as the virus is concerned. And as you pointed out, there's much more than one theory to explain what is going on. The old fable about the 6 blind men and the elephant, where each one thought that the elephant was of a particular kind because that's what that person could feel. It's all over again, except in this case, the elephant is moving and the elephant is also changing shape very fast. Having said that, this is indeed an excellent paper. It's appeared in a peer-reviewed journal.
Yes.
And as the authors have explained to us, it offers a possible correlation, mind you, not necessarily a cause-effect relationship, between one mutant variant of the virus, which they specified, and
that became very widespread over the summer, this DG614G variant. It became very widespread over the summer.
Indeed. So that variant became widespread in Europe. We are seeing a correlation in this elegant study that they have conducted, but that's still a step removed from a cause-effect relationship. There could be a third factor as yet unknown. There could be multiple other factors. When we're dealing with disease, there are always multiple variables. It's not very simple. And this is examining one of those variables in a correlationship rather than in a clearly, unequivocally established cause-effect relationship.
Sure.
And the authors have been very forthright about it in their paper. And yes, it is an important study, but we must also admit we are a long, long way off.
No, absolutely. And as you pointed out in their paper, they also talk about how there are various other factors. This could be one of them. Dr. Souvik Mukherjee, if you could tell us more about, the findings in terms of this particular protein. How is it that there's a deficiency in Asia among people here, and, it's more widespread in the US and in the UK?
So this alpha-1 antitrypsin, this protein is known to be actually cleaving the elastase. So elastase, as Dr. Nidhan told, is a protein that cleaves the elastin, and mostly in the lung epithelial cells and in the liver. You see COPD and other kinds of lung diseases, they are mostly associated with the deficiency in this alpha-1 antitrypsin. And as you know, this elastase comes from a particular cell type. It is called neutrophil. It is called white blood corpuscles, neutrophils. Now, neutrophils are a very important part of innate immune system. Now, when we say about the innate immune system, you can presume that the areas where infection is very high, the basal level rate of infection is very high, there your innate immunity has to be higher to actually combat it. So therefore here the chance of elastase getting higher, naturally selected for, is much higher than in other parts of the world. But as Dr. Nidhan told, if we have elastase in an uncontrolled level, then it will damage our own cells. It will become hypersensitive. So therefore, the mechanism of combating this, intuitively or constitutively higher elastase in Asians has to be naturally selected for also. And therefore, there are studies that have shown that epidemiologically, we have higher levels of AAT than Europeans. But having said that, elegant evolutionary study comparing these, there are several statistical ways to, you cannot compare human evolution just like you compare the evolution of insects in the lab. So for the human evolution to be compared across continental populations, we have some rigorous statistical algorithms to check the correlation and also to check the associations with the ancestral populations. I don't think there has been any such study on AAT, but mostly there are epidemiological studies on the prevalence of AAT. So this can be done and that can be shown.
So it's more to do with genes and the particular race than it's to do with environment or, what we're eating or, the general environment that we live in, Dr. Biswas?
Yeah, so all the associations or prior associations that people have shown, the BCG vaccine, then age and weather, socio-demographic, there are multiple things people have shown, but none of these with a specific subtype of SARS coronavirus that have gone from 0 to 100%. They are not associated with the virus molecular feature. And that is one. And most of these are mere speculation and not really data driven. I think we should keep that in our mind when we are talking about the other factors.
Right, absolutely, and your study's actually been published at a time that where the media were talking about so many studies, pre-publication as well, because as Dr. Parekh was saying, there's so much learning going on, and we're learning as you scientists are researching. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today and explaining this very fascinating another aspect of perhaps why we're seeing the COVID numbers in India going down and why perhaps they're going out of control in the US and the UK. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Gargi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, the other big focus on the show today, we're going to look at vaccines and South Africa's decision to halt its rollout of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine after a study showed disappointing results against its new COVID variant has left many in shock within the country and around the world as well. Several Western governments have rushed to offer support for the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine, and here in India as well, India has said that there's no case of the variant found in South Africa of COVID here in India. It's not been found here so far. And also that India has faith in the AstraZeneca vaccine, and more have been ordered. Remember, this is one of the main vaccines that we're using right now. It's known as Covishield here in India. Well, to talk more about the case in South Africa, we're now joined by a member of the African Task Force for Coronavirus, Professor Salim S. Abdul Karim. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor, again on the show. First and foremost, we talked about how various governments have reacted, but tell us about the reaction in South Africa, because you were really counting on this particular vaccine as a part of your vaccine drive. It's much cheaper and the logistics are much easier.
Yes, absolutely. When we originally developed the South African COVID-19 vaccine plan, it had always called for a diversity of different candidates of vaccines. And right now we are moving forward with 3 candidates and probably will expand further. An AstraZeneca vaccine, or Covishield as we have it, is one of the key vaccines that are part of this overall program. And so it is very disappointing to us to hear the results of a study. It must be pointed out that it's quite a small study and only looked at young people. Yes. And so it only really assessed the efficacy of the vaccine against mild disease. So we have a bit of uncertainty about whether it prevents severe disease. And the reaction here in South Africa has been, oh, now we don't know whether it's going to work. We need to ensure we have the data before we can proceed. So there's concern that it's going to delay our rollout. There's concern that the vaccine may not work. There's some people are arguing, well, the vaccine will work, so why didn't we just give it anyway? So all kinds of views, very important in a democracy.
So how are you now proceeding? I also read that you're going to do a wider study in which there'll be many more participants of the AstraZeneca vaccine, so all is not lost and all those doses won't go to waste. You will be doing a larger study. If you could tell us about that.
So the plan as we've proposed it, it's still under debate, hasn't been adopted yet by the government, is that we've proposed a 2-step rollout program where for the first 100,000 people, we would vaccinate them and we would monitor what the hospitalization rates are. If the hospitalization rates are below our threshold, and then we know that it's now protective, we can roll it out to giving it to the rest of the 1 million doses. If it turns out it's higher, then we'll have to either wait for the AstraZeneca booster shot or give them another vaccine. That way, we still are rolling out the AstraZeneca vaccine, but we're rolling it out in a more systematic and careful way, because we don't want to find we've vaccinated 1 million people and then find that it doesn't work in preventing hospitalization. We'd rather resolve that up front.
All right, and your reaction, to the world's reaction to South Africa's decision, because you had all these countries, then jumping up to the defense of the AstraZeneca vaccine, because already there was talk about how some countries in Europe chose not to use it for the above 65 years old because they felt there's not enough data available on that. And, after South Africa's decision, again, a lot of responses, health ministers coming forward and saying, no, we trust the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yeah, I think, there are many shortcomings in the way the AstraZeneca vaccine trials research program worked. And one of the shortcomings is the lack of adequate data on the safety and efficacy in adults, not just in South Africa, but globally. And so there's quite a lot of concern about rolling it out to the elderly. In South Africa, when we look at what's available, we really need this study that was done in South Africa was done by AstraZeneca. And so it would be very important for AstraZeneca to now share with us the evidence that they have that the vaccine does work in preventing severe disease and hospitalizations. Without their evidence to show that, we have to try and collect that evidence ourselves. And we would prefer that AstraZeneca provide that because it's their vaccine. I think as we look at the situation, we have to recognize that we are trying to deal with a pandemic and there will be some uncertainty and we have to work with that uncertainty. We don't necessarily have to, throw everything out just because there's uncertainty. We'll collect the data as we roll out.
Right. And Professor Karim, also, what is the situation currently in South Africa in terms of this new variant that was discovered there and that's been found to be more infectious? What is the situation right now?
So we had originally anticipated that we would have a second wave in January. And that was really on the basis that during December, it's our festive period, and there's a lot of movement of people. And so they would, start spreading the virus again because we've been in low transmission pretty much since August. Now, what happened that we did not anticipate was two things. The first was that young people, especially university students and high school students, when they finished their final examinations in the beginning of November, that they would go and have parties, and large parties with thousands and with alcohol. And so they created the super spreading events. And the second that we did not anticipate was this new variant. This new variant spreads faster. It is able to escape natural immunity and also is able to escape some of the vaccine immunity. So it's definitely the kind of variant you do not want to have in your country. And in countries where it's already been found, efforts are really underway and very laudably to try and contain this variant.
All right, Professor Karim, thank you so much for joining us here on NDTV.
A pleasure.